If you're an EST student, this lesson is going to help you so much. Let's start it now with Omar al-Mukhtar. And today's lesson is about what is a phrase. The lesson is about the difference between the phrase, the clause, and also the sentence. Let's start with the phrase and give you a definition about what does mean a phrase. In grammar, a phrase is a group of words that act together as a single unit. But to care, one more time, a group of words, yes, and they act like what? A single unit. But to care that this group of words don't contain the things needed to form a sentence. And here I have a question. What do I need to form a sentence? In English, what do I need to form a sentence is the subject, yes, and then the second one, which is the predicate. Let me give you an example about a sentence as you studied before. When you say maybe like he likes English, and then is it a sentence? Yes, it's a sentence. Here is the subject, and then we have the verb and the object. Or now we got older, and then we can name this one as being a predicate. So now, getting back again to what does mean a phrase. A phrase, a group of words, they act like what? A single unit, but take care of a note that our phrase doesn't contain the things needed to form what? Needed to be a sentence. And then phrases may contain nouns, verbs, but they can't function by themselves as what? As complete sentences. So here, let me give you an example about a phrase, and what about having this one, which is shiny gold watches. And the way to be clear enough to help you to see well, we're going to erase. So now the example of the phrase, which is shiny gold watches, is an example of a phrase. If you check, you're going to find exactly a group of words, but here we have the same question, which is it now a sentence? No, it's not a sentence. Why isn't it a sentence? As shiny gold watches, if you check it, it doesn't have a predicate. So getting now to the types. We have different kinds of phrases. The first one, which is a noun phrase. Let me give you an example, like this one, the smelly socks. We name it in English a noun phrase. And then the second one, the gerund phrase. And do you know how to form a gerund? A verb plus ing. The example, hitting nails with the hammer. So hitting nails here is an example of a phrase. It's not a sentence, but it's a phrase. How can I manage it? Yes, how can I know it? It's a verb plus what? Plus ing. And then the verb phrase, which is like a verb. If we have this example, which is has been peacefully sleeping, it's an example of a phrase. What kind of phrase? It's a verb phrase. And then for this type, which is prepositional phrase, from its name, you can identify that it's a prepositional phrase, so it has a preposition. Like of my favorite movies. Here is the preposition, and then so this one, we name it a prepositional phrase. And then the adjective phrase. From its name also, it's an adjective like really small, extremely high. All these are examples of what? Of the adjective phrase. So one more time, if you get back now to the types, you're going to find that we have the noun phrase, the gerund phrase, the verb phrase, the adjective phrase, and then the last one, which is the prepositional phrase. All these, we name them in English, we name them phrases. So if we have also an example to help you to what? To identify different kinds of phrases. And what about maybe this one, which is thinking quickly. We put out the fire with the hose. And then thinking quickly, yes, excellent. I can hear you now well. Thinking quickly, mister, is an example of what? Of a phrase. Yes, here, it's not a sentence. It's just a phrase, a group of words. They can act, these words can act like what? Like a single unit. But it's not a sentence. It doesn't have here maybe a subject or a predicate So here, thinking quickly is an example of a phrase, and what type now? Yes, thinking with the ing, so it's a gerund phrase. If we go now to the second one, which is about the clause, please pay attention because it's something confusing about the definition of the clause. So unlike the phrase, so different from the phrase, a clause does have both a subject and a predicate. So excellent now. So now you're going to ask me, Mister, please now. So it's a sentence. Wait and see. And the clause may be able to stand alone as complete sentence. So yes, your guessing is correct that the clause can be like what? Can be like a sentence. For example, let me give you an example. What about mice eat cheese? Has both. Yes, it has a subject, which is the word mice, and also it has a predicate, which is the verb what? The verb eat. So grammatically, it can stand alone. Yes, so it can be also a sentence. But if you go deeper to the kinds of clauses, you're going to know the difference between the sentence and the clause. Mister, please, can we simplify it together? Yes, till now, one more time. The clause is like a sentence. It has a subject and also a predicate. But if you go now to know more about the major types of clauses, you are going to find that we have a type which is called independent clause, and the second one which is called dependent clause. Oh no, what does mean in English? Independent is what? Is a clause that can stand alone. An independent clause can stand alone by itself. Like the example, mice eat cheese. It's what? It's here a clause and it can stand alone. But for the second type, which is dependent clause, it's a clause but it can't stand alone. We're going to go now to know more about both types of clauses, independent, and let's have this example. I'm allergic to peanuts. Here, if you check it, we have a subject, we have the predicate. So can it stand alone? Can I say I'm allergic to peanuts? Yes, it can stand alone to give me a complete thought. And then for the second one, since I am allergic to peanuts, so now and here is the question. Can it stand alone? No. So that's why we call it what? Dependent, as it can't stand alone. So these are the examples of both the independent one and the dependent one. But here the secret is in this one, the conjunction. The conjunction, which is since, yes, managed to change this clause from being an independent one to be a dependent one. Let me give you an example, another example. Like when you say, while I was running, and now it's a clause. Yes, but is it independent or dependent? So now, while I was running? No, it can't stand alone. That's why it's what? It's dependent. Why? The secret is in the conjunction, which is while. So now, diving deeper into the differences between independent and dependent clause, we have a lot of examples. And then, what about this one, which is, I don't like December because it's always too cold. If you check this one now, is what class is in an independent one. Why? It can stand alone. But for this one, because it's always too cold, it's a clause, as I know. It's not a phrase, if you remember. Yes, but it can't. It can't what? It can't stand alone. This means that we name this one a dependent clause. But this one, we name it independent clause. What's the secret? The secret is in this word, which is the conjunction because. So now, if you want now to compare between the clause and the phrase, how do you tell the difference between a clause and the phrase? It's actually pretty simple. A clause includes what? A subject, as we said, and a predicate. But for the phrase, no. The phrase, as we said, it doesn't have. So now, which one is closer to be a sentence? The phrase or the clause? Excellent, the clause. Especially what? Especially the independent clause. What about now the second one, which is a sentence? What about the sentence itself? A sentence now is a collection of words that include a subject and also a predicate. Let me give you example. Yes, an example, birds fly. This one, is it a sentence in English? Yes, it's a sentence. Why is it a sentence? Here we have a subject and here we have a predicate. So it's correct. So now please try to differentiate between these three. The first one, which is the phrase, a group of words, these words can act together as being a unit, but our phrase doesn't have any subject or also any predicate. And then about the clause, as I told you, the clause is closer to be what? Closer to be a sentence. Yes, but we have two types of clauses. The first one, the independent, that this one can stand alone to be a sentence, but the second type, which is the dependent one, which can't stand alone. What's the secret? The secret is in the conjunction that we use to change it from being independent to be dependent. And then the third one, which is the master, the sentence. And as I told you, the sentence has what? Has a subject and also a predicate. This lesson is very important to enable you to study well in EST. Thank you so much. Waiting for you next time. Bye.